And then kind of staying on that topic of parents, what are some ways that your program has supported parents? In addition to advocating with these different systems, what are some ways your program supports parents who use substances and their children?
I think we go back to the conversation and the talking about it is our big thing. But we really do sit down and have conversations with parents about what is happening with their kids while they're maybe under the influence or in the past when they've used. A lot of parents, they've put something in place. They may send the kids to the grandparents or have friends that help watch the kids, or they have a sitter, the kids are at daycare. It's interesting when you have those conversations because so many people place judgment on parents who use and think that they're just doing it in front of their kids and that their kids have knowledge of it, and a lot of times they don't, and a lot of times the kids are being really cared for. I think that's where you go back to those functioning pieces, is if the kids are being cared for and they have been safe and taken into account age of a child and ability to communicate and those kind of things. I think it's important that we teach that to the parent too. We talk about, we have booklets that we share with developmental milestones for children, just kind of the age group and what's healthy to expect of them and what's maybe not an expectation that should be placed on a child that age, just to give them some parameters too. A lot of times they've had children young. They sometimes have grown up in the system. We deal with a lot of parents who grew up in the system, in the foster care system. They didn't get any role modeling on parenting. They were passed around, some of them their whole lives, aging out of the system at 18 years old and expected to just be a functioning adult. So I think giving people these tools around their children, what I've found to be true is that in 25 years, I don't know that I've ever met a parent that didn't love and care about their child. I've seen some cases of horrible abuse at the hands of a parent, and it's easy to say how that parent felt about the child from that perspective. It's easy to pass judgment, but I've even seen some cases where some serious abuse, and I don't think that those children necessarily needed to be with that parent maybe ever again, but I don't think that the parent had a hatred or just, I think the parent had a lot of issues themselves, a lot of things that they weren't going to be able to overcome easily. So I think if we just look at the fact that the vast majority of people that we see love and care about their children, and at the end of the day, they want to do right by their children. They may not always do it great. They may not do it the way I would do it. They may need help doing it better. But I feel like if I have a parent that really does love and care about the well-being of their children, giving them the tools they need to learn how to express that in a healthy way is the best way to serve them and their children. And if they're struggling with other issues like mental health and substance misuse, helping them understand how to break away when they need to, finding a safe way to do that, a support system they can call on. When they're living with us in shelter, we've encouraged parents that if you can bring the child up to us and say, I need a minute, and you can go have a minute, you can go take a hot bath, you can go read a book for an hour. Just let's give them that space, but also give them the tools and the information that they need that will help them be a stronger parent. And my experience is they want it and they take it and they utilize it when it's made available to them. And again, you're offering it in an environment without judgment about their ability to parent. It's easy to judge other parents. Parenting's hard, very hard, even under the best circumstances. We don't want to place judgment on their parenting either. We want to give them the space.
Yes. And that's Something that I don't think we talk enough about is that parenting, even under ideal circumstances, can be challenging. It can be hard, right? How much literature is out there that when you're in your own home and you're feeling overwhelmed, like you can even just leave your child in a safe place and step away
Right.
and take a breather and come back, and that's better for everyone
Mhm.
involved. And how are those, how's the environment really responsive to that reality?
Right.
Actually supportive and offering resources versus the flip side, which is the judgment and the unrealistic expectations, and that parenting, even in your own space where you have control over all the variables, right?
Mhm.
Can be very stressful, can be taxing. And then add to that being in a new environment or an environment that's not your own, an environment that you don't have full control over. That's a layer of stress.
It definitely is. And it's like that for survivors living in homes where there's abuse too. They really don't have control over the environment, which is why it's so important that we look at child safety through that lens as well. What were they able to do to keep their children safe under the circumstances that they were in? And you can build on that. You don't have to punish people for not doing perfectly. They're trying to do it. You can build on it.
Yes. And then a related question we often get, or maybe a concern that we often hear is, well, I can't let people into our residential program if there's any substance use because we also shelter children. So, what are your thoughts on if there's a program that is currently screening people out because of substance use and it's because of fear of child safety? What are some things you might share with them? What are some ways that they can get started in, seeing this a different way and doing something different?
We do. It seems like that's the word behind a lot of things that I think happen that shouldn't necessarily happen, is this idea of safety and the ability to create safety. I do think that you can maintain a safe environment regardless of that. If somebody's using, I mean, it's not something that I would ever screen out for. If I know somebody's in the facility that has a substance abuse or a mental health issue that may be carrying medication, that's really what we're concerned about, is if they have drugs in the building. Well, you have prescription meds in the building. I guarantee you there's not a shelter around that doesn't have a few bottles of Tylenol, which very dangerous if a child got a hold of it. We have to put precautions in place the best we can. That's why we need to have conversations. We definitely need to address whether, that drugs and alcohol can't be on property and the drugs and alcohol cannot be used on property. I think from my perspective, I've had that happen and it didn't necessarily result in that person being exited from my program either, because I think that we can give people chances and opportunities and then continue to put things in place. It's very rare. And this is, I think the concern I have about it is so much people are like, we can what if this? Well, what if they bring in drugs and alcohol? What if they use it? What if they leave it laying around? What if they become violent? What if? There's a lot of what ifs in shelters and in residential programs. I think we address behaviors as we see them, and we do that quickly and succinctly. We can't ignore it. I think a lot of problems that happen in residential programs, it's because the staff didn't address something quickly enough. They didn't, they were not comfortable having the conversation. They weren't sure how to have the conversation. So I think it's important that we train around that. And sometimes we have to have hard conversations with survivors that may be struggling with this, but they have to understand that they have to be responsible for their behavior too, regardless. And those are conversations that we have to be able to have in a non-judgmental way. And we have to offer an alternative. You can't just say to somebody, you can't use here. And if you're caught using here again, you're not going to have a place to stay. You have to say, okay, you're under the influence something here. And this isn't an appropriate environment for that. So what can we do to help make sure that doesn't happen again? You know what? Sometimes that conversation may be that they use outside and they wait a certain amount of time before they come back. We make sure that's where the safety planning would come in, and we would talk about their safety if that's their choice. But I think you have to be, I think it's our responsibility as advocates really to be proactive in that sense. And instead of just screening out a population because of what might happen, we make sure that we have the tools to address any possible concerns that we have. And that also includes speaking to parents who may not have any of these issues, who have children, about the fact that they're in a residential facility with other people that are strangers to them, that they're just meeting, and how they should maybe view that with their children and protect their children or watch out for their children. We want to create some normalcy, but we also have to be realistic that, it's a big building, that we're in a very large building. It's not like just the kids running around your 1,500 square foot house. You may have to keep a closer eye or make sure that there's activities, the kids are involved in the activities going on, things like that. So I think it was a long way around saying, I think we just have to work on our environment and manage those problems as they come a little bit, instead of what ifing it until we could what if it until we had empty shelters. I mean, these individuals have gone through a lot, and sometimes things are going to happen. They're going to behave in ways that aren't comfortable to advocates. Giving them the space to do that and helping them do that in an appropriate way is the best thing that we can give them, I think. And it does mean sometimes there's harder conversations that you have to have, but it should just be a rarity. That should be on the rare end, not the commonplace end.
Mm-hmm. And I love how you talk about being prepared to have those conversations in the moment, in ways that are succinct and in ways that are still non-judgmental. And that when we're not prepared to have some of those conversations that might feel more difficult, that's where some of the judgment can start to creep in.
Right.